Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, I've never wore a clip-on microphone. This is awesome. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mitchell. I am the Vice President of Turning Point here. It's so great to see everyone coming out tonight. I really appreciate you making time in your schedules to come and talk about a conversation. Let me restart. To have a conversation about a hot topic respectfully and civilly. This is what this night is about. This is what we're here for, is to have someone come and speak about something, and then have the student's perspective, have the community's aspect able to ask questions and respond. And so when he comes up and speaks here, some of you are going to disagree with 100%. You know what? That is all fine. That's okay. I probably actually won't even agree with everything he says. But what's awesome is that we're here and we're able to have dialogue. And that is so crucial and so important today. So I want to thank you all for coming out. It's awesome. First of all, Kirby's here. Thank you for Kirby coming. And then, of course, our UMD police officers. Thank you as well all for coming. I'm the intro guy, so I'm going to get out of your way. And I'm going to invite our chapter president up here right now. So thank you all for coming. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. Put a smile on your face, Drew. Okay, thank you all.
I am not the Turning Point chapter president. I am the College Republicans at UMD president. That's why I'm here. Yep, thank you. There you go. Oh, woo! Yeah. You know, the beauty of a topic like this is that people disagree. And I mean, does it make it challenging sometimes? Yes. But the thing about disagreement is that's what democracy is based off of. And as soon as you stop disagreeing, democracy fails. That's not good. So we need to keep disagreeing. We can't all think the same way. And that's what we're trying to drive home, is disagreement's okay. It's how you go about it. That's where things can get, tough.
So I'm actually the Turning Point chapter president here. So. Well, yeah, guys, everything that Joe said is really important, so we gotta kind of focus on that. I mean, given what's happened and over the course of a couple months here, given all the violence and everything like that, but it's important to focus on where this is going in the future of our country. But just want to say thank you for everyone who's here right now. You guys are awesome. But I think we should lead in prayer. So we're going to do a prayer quick. Do you want to start?
Yeah. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, thank you for this day and just being able to be here together. Thank you for helping everyone get here safe. Thank you for helping our speaker get here safe tonight, Lord. And we just ask that, you open our ears, our heart, and our mind tonight, and so we can listen to comments that we agree with, that we disagree with, Lord. And then we just remember that everyone is human. We all make mistakes. We all have our own opinions and beliefs and values.
Help us to look at people's hearts, Lord, instead of people's actions. Protect us. We praise your name. We thank you for today. We thank you for the things that we have, but we also pray for those people who don't have the things that we have. We pray for the future of this country. We pray for peace and not violence. We pray for love and not hate. In Jesus' holy name we pray, amen. All right, so without a doubt, AK Kamara, everyone.
The long, awkward walk up here is always super fun. My name's AK Kamara. How's everyone doing tonight? Good? Okay, I listen, you're coming out here on a Wednesday. There's probably a lot of other things that you would rather do, but I'm very thankful for everyone that has shown up today. I think it's important to be able to have these conversations, engage in thoughtful dialogue. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Obviously tonight, I want to talk about mass deportations and more specifically why I'm in favor of them. A little bit about myself. AK Kamara is, I guess you could call it my professional name. My actual name is Abdurrahman Magba Kamara. So that's a whole mouthful. Well, my father immigrated to this country legally from Sierra Leone. So from the time that I was a small child, right, these are conversations that I've heard, I've been part of, in regards to what does immigration to the United States look like, and why would we ever have deportations to begin with? And so from a knowledge-based standpoint, I think I'm pretty knowledgeable. I have family members that have immigrated to this country successfully. I have family members that haven't immigrated to this country successfully because they've committed crimes. And so because of that, I think that I have a lot of firsthand knowledge. But secondly, I genuinely care about the well-being of this country. I think that most Americans are in that same boat. The question is, what policies are policies that encourage the flourishment of what America is, and what policies actually hurt that? So I'm gonna kind of go over a handful of things. I'm gonna leave, at the very end, probably 30 or so minutes for some dialogue, some Q&A, some back and forth. But I just want to start off and just say that immigration, and more specifically, mass deportation, not only is something that matters when it comes to the foundation of our country and who we are as a nation, but it's actually the morally righteous position. And I'm going to kind of go through what I mean by that. So what's the history of immigration into this country, right? We were started as this country of migrants. We were traversing the ocean, trying to figure out what's where, and Christopher Columbus came and he's like, hey, there's this area over here, and discovered North America, and we have the indigenous population of people that are here living their life. But ultimately, when you have this expanse of people, you actually come across the first, I would say, piece of understanding why immigration and having borders and having a policy matters. What did we do when we came into this country? We came in and we did what we wanted to. We came in, we took over, and we established that this is our nation. Now, you can have as much criticism and critique that you want, but it's undeniable that if the people that were here when we came here, and by we I'm talking about our American predecessors, when we came here, had strong borders and immigration policies, things would have probably turned out different. So just understand that the history of this country is one where we came to this land and we established that we were going to have a country. And from that point, we had more and more people coming to this country. But at some point, we said, all right, so we have this nation that's been founded. How do we develop this ethos? How do we keep the United States of America after having our Constitution, after having all of these different conflicts about, are we going to be a federalist system? Are we going to be more of a states' rights system? But we decided that we need to have something that will guarantee that if people want to come and provide to making this country better, that we have a process. And so began the long history of how immigration in this country has worked. So for a very long time, we kind of worked on this honor system. You come to this country, you kind of tell us who you are, and you just kind of get to stay here as long as you don't do anything that really violates what our country stands for. And up until recently, that system worked okay. Now, of course, we had to pass laws kind of through that process to make sure that there was an actual process to hold people accountable that come to this country that want to cause it harm. But I'll take my own personal example. When my father came to this country, he wasn't interested in importing Sierra Leone to the United States of America. He thought that the United States of America was an amazing country, and he wanted to come here for something better. Otherwise, he would have stayed over there. And the conversations that my father and I would often have, I would just say, why did you come here, Dad? What was so bad about your home country that you came here? And he's like, there's nothing bad about it. I just thought that there were better opportunities here. Now understand that my father did not come from a poor family. My grandfather was actually the ex-serviceman association president of Sierra Leone. After World War II, he went around Africa establishing basically VAs. He also had a really good working relationship with the British and with the Queen of England, and he was awarded multiple awards. So why would my father, who had all of that in Sierra Leone, come here? Because the United States of America was still a better opportunity. So when you look back through the history of this country and you realize that we had this expanse period, and then we have to decide, when people come here, are they coming here to integrate to becoming Americans, or are they coming here with their own objectives and goals? And I would argue that the system that we've had up until the inauguration of Donald Trump for his second term was a broken system that was far more broken than anyone actually realized. So here's just some numbers and some stats to just consider. In the last 5 years, from 2019, there were 11 million encounters at the border. 11 million. And that is an unsustainable number, because of those 11 million, you have to ask yourself, how many actually got into the country? Well, according to whatever data source you want to look at, it's somewhere around 8 million got into this country. And then there's this huge number of what we call gotaways. So we had this huge influx of people into the United States. Now, on its surface, it's like, okay, people want to come here for a better life. They decided to not come through a legal port of entry. And that brings me kind of to my second point. When you enter this country and your first move is to enter not through a port of entry, it's usually because one of two things is happening. You're being chased, which there is kind of a legal process where you're seeking asylum and you're an asylee, or it's because you don't want to go through the correct process because there might be a red flag in your life. And I would argue that that's the main reason why people come across the border illegally, is because there's a reason that they didn't go through the main port. There's something in their background, there's something in their demeanor that makes them choose to not go the legal way. So I would argue that that step in and of itself is an immoral action. Now we have 8 U.S.C. 1325 that actually does define that as a criminal action. If you come into this country, not through a legal port, you don't run to your first border agent and say, hey, I declare myself to be this, that is an illegal action. There's a lot of back and forth about, what's that number look like? Well, I like to say you can search for any answer you want on the internet. You can find some data source that's probably going to affirm. So I always like to look at averages. About 60% of the illegal aliens in this country came through a border port that was not manned by anyone, meaning that they just came across and they go to a port of entry. 60%. About 35% are people that have overstayed their visas. And the other 5% are the ones that actually are trying to seek asylum and they actually have a justified claim. And so when you kind of look at all of that in its totality, you have this huge number. Now, like I said, there's 11 million border interactions that happened from 2019, basically just until President Trump was inaugurated, and about 8 million or so got in. So the question is, how many illegal immigrants are in this country right now? That estimate can be anywhere from, the lowest that I've seen is 12 million, because obviously people were here before this mass push and invasion on our border. But then there's people that have been here for a very long time. So let's say the conservative estimate is 12 million illegal aliens. There are some estimates that say it could be as high as 40 million. So at the outset of this, I said that there is a proper way that this is law and order and it upholds our values, and that it's morally a righteous aspect to enforce our border and have mass deportations. So when you're asking how many illegal aliens have entered this country, and you're saying, what's the deal, right? That's the argument that everyone's gonna ask. So what, they're here. What's the problem? One stat that I think can really kind of shed a light on what you think, regardless of whether or not you think people should be able to come across the border, should have open borders. Every year, on average, there's 1,300 American citizens that are killed by an undocumented illegal alien. And that's the low estimate. Some estimates say as high as 4,700. But like I said, you can find whatever number. Let's go with the low number. 1,300 American lives are lost by people that should not be here. There's no way of getting around that. And over a long enough period of time, we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Now again, that's just people that are drunk driving or It could just be a poor ability to drive, they suck at driving or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, if they were not here, there is an American life that's tied to that death that would be alive. There's no way of getting around that. Now, of course, the other part is a part that people on the left really get upset about, is when you're talking about the criminals. Of the total people right now in the United States that have entered this country illegally, this conversation, like, let's say it's 5%. 5% of your 14 million are people that are bad people. And everyone else is good. Is that 5% tolerable? 5% that are out, that are part of MS-13, Tren de Aragua, belong to any other organized criminal group, that are out killing Americans, selling drugs, trafficking individuals? I would argue no. That's not something that we have to actually live with in this country. If we just enforce our border, and we enforced our border policies, you would have this element gone. But the other 95%, and again, I'm throwing out a number to get you to really think about this. Of the other percentage, what's the problem? What are they doing by not being legally declared, not stepping out of the shadows? How does that affect our economy? Well, it turns out that somewhere around 60-ish% of illegal immigrants are low skilled. So that means that they are actually taking low skilled American paying jobs. I know people say that's not true, they took our jobs. The evidence is very, very clear. When you've seen a drop of just people being deported, you've seen an increase in Americans that take these jobs. So that's really, again, back to the central point. If you want to have a cohesive country, if you want to have a nation that functions, you want to have an American identity, people have to come to this country to improve it. And when you have low-skilled people that come and take American jobs, that is actually hurting the Americans that this country is owed to them, all of the rights and benefits of an American citizen. So the other thing that I want to talk about is something that no one really ever talks about, which is the harm that actually happens to illegal aliens from having a policy that just allows unfettered access. And once you get here, and we close on the border like we have now, what are the continued ramifications? So sex trafficking, human trafficking, is horrific. Would everyone agree with that? Sex trafficking, human trafficking, bad thing. Of all the groups of people, you can look across the country and say which group has the greatest likelihood to being trafficked. It's illegal aliens. Because the fact that they came to this country and don't have legal permission to be here already encourages abuse of the system. Now I know that the answer to that is like, well then we should just grant everyone amnesty. Granting amnesty only changes legal status. It does not change the situation that they're in. If you went to someone and said, well, hey, now that sex work has been legalized, this pimp that's been my pimp for the last 10 years is just going to walk away. That's not the way that it works. So in the same way, the real victims of illegal immigration are the people that are actually suffering, that are becoming literal slaves. In the United States, one of the biggest problems that we have, that we can actually point a finger at to ourselves, is that we don't actually enforce very, very well any of the policies that say E-Verify, that you have to actually go and make sure that when you hire someone, that they have legal permission to be here and that they have legal status to work. That's a huge, huge problem for a lot of Americans that they have to confront. It's also the reason, in my estimation, why we actually have had such a porous border. We all know that when we look at populations, the American population is declining. So the answer that was put forward by people that believe that, globalism is the key, is to flood the country with low-skilled labor, and therefore, you're going to be able to help build up our economy. But it turns out that that is detrimental to the American population. Now, as I said before, when you have all these low-skilled labor workers that are replacing or taking the place of American workers, what does that do to your community? Well, it turns out that if you have unemployment that is higher in American communities, you actually have more crime. So if you take nothing else out of that point, the question is, just be very real with yourself. Would you rather that your fellow American citizens suffer, or someone goes back to their home country and comes through illegally? Now, another point that I want to bring up, no one that is having a serious conversation about mass deportation is at all against the entire idea that immigration in general is a bad thing. As I said to you, I come from an immigrant family. And the conversations that we have is that this country was founded with these principles and values that can actually make people's lives better, right? The American dream, the idea of that existing, is that you can come here with nothing and you can make a great success for your family, for your future. But if you come to this country and you do not have the set of principles or values, then what does this country become? And ultimately, when we talk about legal immigration, there is a process in which having law and order and having a rule and set of systems, we get to manage what that looks like in this country. When you have no management because people are off doing their own thing, there's a less likelihood that you're going to have uniformity of actually creating the American dream and spreading it. More recently, you've heard people say something that really grinds my gears. Diversity is our strength. I actually disagree with that fundamentally. Unity is our strength. Diversity is a tension that allows for basically greater innovation. It's a tension, but in and of itself, diversity is terrible when you're trying to actually function in any system, any organization. You want unity. You want people that say, we are here for a common goal and purpose, but I'm going to take my difference to help sharpen against this tension that exists. So in fact, unity is our greatest strength. Diversity just helps make sure that we don't become stagnant. And that really is at the center of why mass deportations must occur. We're at a point in this country where we have this kind of disparate idea of what America is. And I think that illegal immigration is a huge part of why that is the case. When you have people in this country that are being told, it doesn't matter, you don't have to speak, the language of this country, you don't have to have any of the traditions or values, you just come here, you pick your little slice of land, and you do what you want to do. Like I said at the very beginning, that's what happened to the native population. They did not stop the invasion of Europeans coming into this land. And as you see what has occurred, the indigenous people, they are relegated to something that is far different than what I imagine their ancestors would have wanted them to have. But that is how human beings work. And so when we talk about the need for mass deportation, we need to actually create order back again. We need to create this idea that America is a unified nation that has unified principles, and those unified principles start with, we have a country that has borders, that has a purpose. And the purpose of our country is to enrich the lives of Americans. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will say to me is like, AK, back when this country was founded, we had the Statue of Liberty, send us your poor, huddled masses. Don't you think that what you're talking about now with wanting mass deportations is against that ethos? And I say, absolutely not. Because if you come to this country legally, you can come here as a poor, huddled mass of people. You just have to come through a port of entry and say, this is what I want to do to enter this great nation. Now, I will argue that another part of this equation of why mass deportations must happen is that when you get an inflow of people that you can't account for, that you can't actually plan an economy around, your hospitals become overflowed with people, your public service systems start to break down, even your welfare systems start to break down. Because listen, I don't think any sane, rational person would walk by someone bleeding and starving to death on the ground. Most people that I know, I'm a Christian, I would never allow that to happen. So our country actually says that we're going to not let that happen. You bring someone into a hospital, regardless of their immigration status, we're going to take care of them. So the question is, who's going to pay for it? Well, just from an organizational standpoint, if you don't know who these people are, and you haven't been able to vet them, your systems start to break down. And that is part of the reason why even our legal migration system is having the problems that it has. Why it takes so long to get through the system is because you could direct all of your resources to a clear, concise process, or you can have this chaos and pandemonium that we've had happening for the last, at this point, we're probably talking about a solid 20 years, where we've had these ebbs and flows of a lot of illegals rushing the border and having these migrant caravans, as they called them, with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people coming through. What was it, back about a year and 3 months ago? We had one of our highest ever border crossing months, where there was something like 146,000 people that came through in 1 month, which was absolutely absurd. But it puts strains on the system. It puts stresses on the system. And like I said, it's not that everyone that comes across the border illegally is, some type of vicious criminal. They are criminals, because like I said, 8 U.S.C. 1325 clearly defines that if you do that, that's in violation of the law. But there are that percentage of people that are committing crimes, like the man that killed Laken Riley. Absolutely horrifying story. So just understand that when I say mass deportations must happen, they need to happen, they have been happening, it's also that it's a morally righteous position. Because not having a system that encourages good behavior, that encourages assimilation into a system that allows you to say, America's the greatest country in the world, we do want to take on those that are struggling, that have a hard time in their life, then that system breaks down. And this is kind of the last piece that I want to talk about. Understand that people, we're individuals, but we act as groups. And when your group begins to feel threatened, you will not lay down and die. That is not how human beings work. It's not how we've ever worked. Go back through all of human history. There comes a point that if we, as a government, aren't able to successfully solve problems, people will solve their own problems. And I don't think that people want to have that type of effect. I know I don't. And that comes with so many different things, but on the topic of immigration, if we actually don't say, as a nation, here's what our laws are, let's enforce them, then people will say, well, I don't trust the system. And what happens when you go from a high trust society to a low trust society? Death and destruction. Because no one trusts anyone else. So when you come into my area and you don't look like what I want you to look like, or you're foreign to me, to my group, and I'm not even just talking about the color of your skin, it could be the clothes that you wear, the fact that you speak with a different accent, you're from California and you sound like a California New Yorker. If people don't trust that the system will be able to handle and met out these differences that you're going to have, people will solve them themselves. And that's just the truth of the matter. So again, when I say morally righteous position is mass deportations, I mean that our system, in order to survive, in order to thrive, must have a system that everyone says, okay, we have trust. And there's a piece to this to understand. When you look at polling data, over and over and over again, when you ask people that were not born in the United States, that immigrated here legally, and you just ask them in general, are you for mass deportation of everyone? I don't care if we're talking about the criminal plus, is what I'll call it. On average, you're like 70% approval. 70%. Because these are the people that went through the legal process, that spent the time and energy, that are so proud to be American. My father, when he was naturalized in 1993, my mom and dad, they were together. My dad had a crack addiction. Mom and dad got divorced. Mom and dad got back together after my dad got his life back together. And at the time, he applied for a citizenship. Thankfully, when he was smoking crack, he wasn't actually dealing crack, so he didn't have any of those things, so he was able to become a legal citizen. And when he became naturalized, he cried because he was finally able to say, I'm an American citizen. I'm proud to be American. Now, my dad, he was so proud to be American, that he didn't actually want to give me the right last name, because I have two last names, and he said, it's only American to have one, so I have two middle names, and I changed that when I got married. But he also wanted to make sure that I understood what I had in this country, the opportunity that was afforded to me. Because, like I just said, so many people that come into this country the legal way understand what it means to be an American. And so, in closing, before we go to questions, I just want you to understand that if you kind of look at what the mass deportation movement looks like right now, you have ICE agents that are out there, and they are making sure to enforce the law. And I said this earlier to a gentleman I was talking to. We do want people, just in general, if you support mass deportation, to self-deport. That's like the easiest possible way. And if you actually look at the messaging that you've seen coming out of the White House, it's been pretty successful. Right now, we've had about 2.1 million people leave this country. Of the 2.1 million that have left, about 1.6 million of them self-deported. And that's actually what we want. We want people, in our efforts of mass deportations, to self-deport. Right now, it seems like the Department of Homeland Security, they're doing a pretty good job at messaging. They're playing these commercials. $1,000 and a free flight home, and if you take us up on this offer, you can apply legally to come here. If you don't, you're not going to be allowed back in this country if we catch you. And that's ultimately, again, when you look at the large numbers, about 540,000 or so people have been deported against their will, I guess you could call it. But it was, something that they always understood when you come to this country without permission. So that was the last thing I just wanted to throw out there, is that mass deportations, at the end of the day, are the morally righteous position to have. And I ultimately believe that if we as a nation continue to support mass deportations, we will be able to create a high-trust society again. And as things are right now, the vast majority of Americans support deportation. You just got to do it the right way. Thank you so much. And I think now we're going to open up some questions.
I'm going to have a follow-up question after I ask the question.
Sure.
So, what visa did your father get? What kind of, how did he get in? What was the legal way? It was different back in the 60s than what is now. So
My dad came here in 79.
79.
Yeah, I'm 41. I'm old, I ain't that old, man. I believe he came here, on a work visa. My father passed away from stomach cancer,
okay.
but.
Yes. Thank
Yep.
you. Because there are not that many legal ways to self-petitions. I mean, there is basically none. If you just want to come, and if you don't have a work visa or a family thing or a special situation or the diversity visa, there is no other way if somebody just wants to come. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so.
You can go to Canada, and you can go to Australia and self-do it.
Mhm.
I mean, just apply for yourself, and they have point systems and stuff.
Mhm.
But the United States does not have anything like that. So if somebody wants to come and he doesn't have some kind of connection already, I don't know of any way. If you know, that would be great.
Sure, so I understand that the requirements to come to this country have changed over time, obviously. When my father first came here, like I said, he came here, I believe, on a work visa, and then he actually went back to Sierra Leone. He had met my mother, they ended up getting engaged, and he went through that process to be able to become a permanent resident. And like I said, he had his permanent residency until 93. I was born in 84, and that's how that worked. But I think to your point, right, the processes to come here legally, you say that they're relatively small, right? There are, well, if there was none, right? Like, I guess if your argument is that there's no legal way to come here, then why do we have legal immigrants here?
They are family related.
You can go back up to the microphone if you want to. Just so everyone can hear your point.
So somebody from a U.S. citizen or a legal resident green card holder can petition relatives, and for brothers, sisters that are not immediate family, it takes over 10 years wait time. But
It
still,
can.
it can. Yes.
Mhm. And that's
so-
what I argued, if you remember earlier.
Yeah, but that
is that when we have so many people that come to this country, it actually, you get all of your immigration courts that are filled with people which, by the way, 90% of asylum seekers are denied because on its surface, it was a waste of everyone's time.
Absolutely.
But that's, yeah.
I'm not challenging, I'm just saying that there is no other way. So some of the people that come at the border is because they don't have any other way to do it. There is no you cannot self-immigrate. Somebody has to bring you in, either work or family,
Correct.
basically. Unless you're exceptional or you come
Mhm.
and you're a millionaire and you're gonna bring jobs or stuff like that. But other than that, it's
Yeah,
It's
so
very
again,
restricted.
right, I understand what you're saying. Ultimately, if you want to come here to work, I guess the other question would be, what would you be coming here for if you weren't coming here to work, right? So, I mean, there's different circumstances, and I understand that, but in general, right, the process is gonna be, you come here to work, right? And maybe you say, I don't have any skill. Being an American, let's just also put this as a caveat, is a amazing right for those of us that are born here. But it is a privilege for people that are not born here. And that is by design. Otherwise, we would have open borders.
Okay, now sorry for this. Yes, of course they come to work, but finding a job in the States without being here, it's very hard. So you're outside and you want to find a job here, tough luck. You can't find a job if you're here. Now these days, after the COVID and whatever, they do a whole bunch of interviewing online and stuff, but yeah, you can, it's not easy. Usually the people that come with work visas were here for a while, they have some connection, maybe they worked some period of time, and then they get an arrangement with some employer to sponsor them. But other than that, if you're outside, tough luck to come from anywhere just because you saw something in the newspaper or online that, look, this job is available.
Agreed. Yeah,
Yeah,
you said
so-
it. Tough luck. You're correct. Yep.
Hi, yeah, along those lines, I didn't hear a lot of your addressing the economic need, which I think that a lot of people come here to work. And I think we can see that because that's where we find undocumented people is at workplaces sometimes. So I know they're there. I don't know exactly the numbers. Maybe you know them better, and maybe you could address that a little bit about how the system that we have of allowing a certain number of people and percentage by country and all that other complicated stuff isn't matching our need for workers.
Sure. Well, what I would argue is that it is matching it, but it's just displacing otherwise low-skilled American workers that would take those jobs. But if you have a huge, and this is why I said we have to be accountable to this, if we, tomorrow, if E-Verify was passed, you would see unemployment drop to almost nothing. And that's the hardest part, is that we've passed it, but we don't enforce it. We do not enforce E-Verify. So the problem is that you have these trafficking networks, and they are connected with businesses that are mostly low-skilled labor jobs, and they come and they take those jobs. Not that they like fought someone out for it, they just literally like, we have all these people and they're ready to work. And that's what happens, is you have this huge labor displacement. And like I said, ultimately, if you had E-Verify that was actually enforced, then you would see a huge number of low-skilled people find jobs because they would have to compete the companies, or the companies would fail. And I'm at the point, right, the economic argument, if you want to say the old right would say, you know, open borders is great for free markets, man, free markets and capitalism. I actually think that has led us to the point that we are right now. And ultimately, allowing slavery for economic good is always an immoral thing. If we know that there is all types of trafficking, labor trafficking happening, and then we say, oh, but my business is gonna fail, your business should fail. And that's the point that I'm at as a country. But again, when you look at the number of people that we have that are available right now, we can actually still allow this economy to thrive. And what we've seen, since deportations have ticked up, and since people are afraid of being deported, so they're kind of, you know, shirking back into the shadows and moving around, which we don't want that either. That's why we need to continue to push on self-deportation, encourage them financially, because ultimately, that system, if it was 100% dependent, you would have seen our economy right now tanking, and it's not. What we're actually finding out is that a lot of the employment numbers at the end of the Biden era were actually from illegal immigrants. They were using those numbers to pad their numbers, and so what you're actually seeing now is that as people are not showing up to work because they don't want to get deported, you're actually not seeing this huge disparity because there actually are workers, and those companies are like, I guess we better pay better wages. And here's one little piece that I'll put on there. Some of you may remember, or at least you've read it historically, Bernie Sanders used to say that open borders was a Koch brothers conspiracy. And just the other day, he praised Trump on one thing. He said, hey, at least our borders are secure so American workers can be paid better wages. And that's not for nothing.
There's so much there. I just want to be clear, I'm not for slavery.
You're not for what?
I'm not for slavery.
Good,
So I
thank you.
I don't want
appreciate
some
that.
system where, people are just coming in and working at low wages and not being protected, so.
That's good. I'm glad you clarified that.
So, I don't know, there's just too much there to, I guess we'd have to go through, over some other number. I'm not even understanding how E-Verify would lower.
Right, so E-Verify right now is
0%.
not being
I mean,
enforced,
yeah,
right?
I mean,
So
that's-
you enforce it,
Employers
and
have a
you
lot.
find all
okay.
of these employers,
Yeah.
right? And they have to then fire the person that should not be there. Then you're gonna have all these open jobs. And I'm saying, my argument is, based off the economic data, those jobs will be filled by Americans, but they're just gonna have to pay higher wages.
I
to be
think
able to fill
that's the major disagreement. I don't know how we could work that one out, so, but,
Sure,
yeah.
I mean,
appreciate it.
again, the place I think that you would scratch is right now, with the amount of people that have voluntarily stopped going to work, we should be seeing unemployment shoot through the roof, and you're not. You're not seeing that, and that's because those jobs, where these sectors are hurting, are having to step forward and say, I guess we're gonna pay higher wages. And that's what's actually happening, and that's what the economic data supports, but
Yeah, okay, maybe.
there.
I got it.
Can I hold it?
Yeah.
Hey, average middle-aged white guy here.
Great, man.
So I was a pastor for about 15 years.
Love it.
And thanks. You're saying a lot of things confidently, but I really hope that people here do research because,
Of course.
well, just a lot of things you're saying are just not factual. They're not. So
Sure.
I know I have one question.
Tell me
So,
what's not factual, my friend.
well, first of all, you started by Christopher Columbus discovered America. Just not true.
I didn't say America, I said North America.
Yeah, didn't, but.
I said for Europeans, because then or later on, I said that Europeans came to this country.
Great. So,
And, I mean, you can tell me about the Vikings, I guess, or whatever.
so Native Americans, you're talking about if they just had a border policy, most are killed by germs, as we know, right?
Okay, but if they would have had a border policy, then they wouldn't have had the germs.
Right, fabulous, right, that's
Well, I mean,
ridiculous.
it's true.
Right. They didn't know about germs, man, there's the blankets. So, anyway, 1,300 people killed, that's what you cited, so
Yep.
again, I hope people do their researches.
Yeah, yeah.
You're just saying things. By illegal immigrants, of course, that's all very sad. 47,000 people killed every year by guns, right, by firearms.
Mhm.
So we talk about that in terms of impact to human life. That would be maybe a better story.
Yeah, I mean, one is a constitutional right, the Second Amendment. The other is people that
So
came
you're
from
okay with
opposition.
people getting killed as long as it's a constitutional right?
Am I okay with them getting killed? I'm saying
Yeah.
that that's a part of it, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Uh,
My Second Amendment right to defend myself, my family, if one of the consequences is that people go and murder other people, why would that ever be in a consideration for me protecting my family? That's absurd.
yeah, I don't agree with you, but it's fine.
Obviously, you don't.
So you talked about human trafficking and so I spent a lot of time in Nicaragua in the 1990s. So a lot of friends who grew up there, not criminals, not violent, not MS-13 gang members, looking for a better life, looking for something that they could sustain themselves. And many of them would find ways to get to the border because this would provide just an opportunity for life, for food, right? So one of the things that you mentioned was about human trafficking and the victimization of those folks. Who are the main perpetrators that are violating those women who are being trafficked?
I mean, the organized criminals are the ones trafficking them.
No, who's doing it?
What do you mean who's doing it?
White men.
Okay.
Predominantly. I'm just
Okay,
saying, so if there wasn't a demand, there wouldn't be criminal activity. So look around the room.
Yeah, so, you know, I love this argument because it's like, well, if we were just more moral of people, then we wouldn't have to take advantage of people that are being trafficked. Like, what's the point of that? Like, I'm just
The
asking.
point is accountability. The point is, if you
So
want to talk about,
do you want to make it illegal?
I want to talk.
Like make all sex work illegal? I just wanted to just ask if that's something that you're.
I'm just saying that there's a reason. Those people are being trafficked, and people are taking advantage of them, and they're not illegal.
So
or
if they
undocumented
were,
folks.
if we had, if
The
we were
white
able
guys.
to, if we were able
People
to
sitting here.
enforce, if we're able to enforce our borders, and we're able to stop the people that are here in this country right now, that are part of organized criminal units, from trafficking those women,
But many of
then
those,
you no longer
many of those
have
organizations
people.
are not from illegal. They're not. They're maybe trafficked, but they're people that are legal.
I'm saying, once they get to the United States, they are being organized,
By
and
who?
moved around
By
by
who?
other criminal organizations,
By who are what?
who are a mix of
American
everything.
citizens.
Oh, no, I mean, it's a mix of everything.
When ICE
I-
could spend their
listen,
time,
listen.
if they wanted to crack the code,
Yeah,
instead of arresting Mexicans in Home Depot parking lots,
Yeah, listen,
they'd spend their time doing something like that.
I grew up in North Dakota, and I grew up very, very poor. And I grew up, and I actually was involved in illicit drug trade when I was a teenager. And I dealt with cartel in Fargo, North Dakota. And I can tell you this, the cartel doesn't just let you do what you want. They organize, and they facilitate, and then they watch their product. So, to your point, it's not like the cartel like stops at the border and says, well, you're on your own, all the white men are gonna traffic you there for me. That's not the way that it works. The cartel organizations are still operating, and if we stopped them from being in this country by mass deporting them, then we don't have to worry about cartel trafficking illegal aliens in this country.
And we wouldn't have to worry about the cartel if the administration maybe put a focus on those kinds of crimes.
Which they
It's-
are, I believe. I mean, there's been a lot of, there's been a
Are you
lot of
seeing it on
FBI.
the news, like, you know, the poor Mexican guy being arrested in the parking lot? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Here's my only
am
question.
I seeing it? Yes. And by then seeing that there's this narrative being pushed from the left of like, oh, look at this 16-year-old girl was put in handcuffs. And then DHS comes out and says, here's who this person was. And like the idea that you are only going after, you know, mom and dads or whatever. The point of the matter
Are
is,
you watching the news?
well, it's more than watching the news. Of the 540,000 people that have been deported so far, do you have any idea about what percentage of them actually had additional criminal records?
No, tell me.
28%.
Enlighten me.
28%.
Great.
Okay? Now, that's the worst of the worst, and that equals out to about like 140,000 are people that actually were violent criminals that were being deported. But as I said, if you come into this country, you can be mad about the law. We can have a conversation about whether or not you think we should have open borders or whatever, or we should get rid of 8 USC 1325. But at the end of the day, that's what the law says. So you can't come without coming through a legal port of entry unless you claim asylum, and you're granted asylum. Like, again, if a guy is being arrested in a parking lot instead of having law enforcement go after cartels, we do both. And what I was suggesting
You
to
know
you,
what? Excite that. Like, tell me,
Mhm.
are they doing both? I don't agree with you. That's-
all you have to do is go to the Department of Justice under their press releases. They have stories all over the place. My favorite follow on X is DHS, because they post it all the time. ERO St. Paul, they have an X page, and they post when they arrest people all the time, and they show their rap sheet and all that good stuff. So you can go and check it out if you want to.
Sweet. I would just, my last thing, sorry, this is a lot of questions, and I'm getting nudged.
No, I'm glad that you're asking, man.
I think, though, that I don't understand, honestly, as a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
that you can propose to take a morally righteous, like even using those words,
Mm-hmm.
is a completely unbiblical. I mean, I would be glad to argue that point, that the Bible is full of space where we, to your point, how are we welcoming folks? It's about welcoming folks and creating space. I'm not saying for everybody, but for people and we have plenty of resources and plenty of opportunity. How do we create that? And so the morally righteous is just a really awkward phrase for a Christian to use for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jesus multiple times talked about giving to Rome what is due to Rome, and to Jesus and to God what is due to him. So we have laws, right? It is morally righteous to follow the law, but I argued, if you listen to everything I said, is that because of the reduction of human trafficking, wage theft, labor abuses, right, along with creating a morally high trust society, those are the morally righteous things. So when I talk about being morally righteous, understand that as a Christian, we are called to what? Make disciples. That shouldn't stop if our government has a law that we are following. And I would argue, take all of your time and energy and convince your legislature, US Congress, to pass, I guess, open border laws. Because if that's what the law of the land is, then that's what the law of the land is. So that's where I come from when we talk about being morally righteous. I am saying that morally, stopping all those bad things that are happening from happening and creating a high trust society is a morally righteous position to take. Following the law is actually morally righteous as well, because that's what Christ commands us to do.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, you hold it for me? Oh,
Yep.
Thank you. So you and I both agree that, like, why would you come here if not to work? You said that earlier. Is that a true statement?
I'm saying if you want to come to the United States, you probably want to come to work, yes.
Okay, so yeah. But you also cited that many of the people who come here are criminals. So is there a reason that deportation is not occurring after being arrested? Because we have statistics on, like you said, such and such, or 28% of the people who we have deported so far already have an existing criminal record.
Mhm.
Is there a reason that deportation isn't happening after the arrest or after those records are being taken, and instead it's just entire families, entire like groups of people? What is there a
It's
reason?
both. It's not just one or the other.
Right. So is there a reason that it's not consolidated after arrests? What's
So
your argument for
you
that?
need to explain to me what you mean by consolidated after arrest.
I mean, occurring only after arrest. Like instead of spreading ICE to both situations, focusing on post arrest, or post a crime being committed.
So you're saying you want to wait until they commit a crime and then deport them? But if they don't commit an additional crime, because like I said, you pass across the border without permission, that's a crime, but is that what you're suggesting?
I suppose so, yeah, because there are many immigrants who won't commit crimes in their time here, who do just come here to work.
Commit additional crimes. Because like I
I'm
said,
going to
8
keep the
USC
verbiage that I used,
1325,
actually.
it is a crime to come into this country. It's not just a civil matter.
Right.
Now, if you overstay your visa, that is civil, but I also think that that's an awful argument, because getting married and divorced is civil, and we still actually honor those things. Having custody of your children is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. So it's still a system of laws that we have, whether you're criminal or civil. But to your point, I don't think you want to do both, right? Listen, let's flesh out AKA magic deportation. Every single illegal alien is deported from this country, and we have people that have legal permission in varying statuses. And we start from there, then maybe, because we'd be able to stop people from entering this country in the first place. So it kind of solves itself. I just don't think that you can solve it by saying, let's only go after people once they've committed additional crimes. Because like I said to you, with low trust society, which is what we've basically turned into, I don't want it to get any lower. We need social cohesion. And when you come here, not through the right way, there's just a propensity that you're going to go and say, I'm gonna do this for my own thing, and not come here for I wanna work, but I wanna be part of this American ideal and ethic. And that's what the numbers actually show. That's what the ethos shows. When you find these, again, the polling data is crazy on it. For people that are naturalized citizens, for people that are permanent residents, when you ask them, do you support deportations? It's a huge number, like I said, 50, 60, 70%. So if it wasn't, then maybe there'd be an argument. I'm saying that there's actually a different mindset and mentality for people that enter this country legally to support what America is, to support our unity as a great nation of a lot of different ideas and beliefs.
Right. So you said that policies should encourage the flourishing of America, like the policies that the government passes are meant to support the flourishing of America.
In general, yeah.
So how does that apply to, one, the immigrants who aren't committing any crimes, are coming here solely to work? Two, the immigrants who are being provided for by their family, like for example, the innocent women and children, the stay-at-home moms, the children who are just going to kindergarten, like they are not committing crimes. Where do they fall in that? And they're not guilty by their father's crimes or their husband's crimes. And secondly, policies encouraging the flourishing of America. Where does that leave all of the other people in America who do commit crimes or repeat offenders or felons? Where does that morality come in for them? Should they be treated differently simply because they were born on American soil? And if we want to go that route, what makes you any
This
different?
is a very, very long question, but I appreciate it.
Well, your answer
I'm
was
gonna
very,
try and
very long. I
remember
think
it.
it's.
I'm gonna try and remember everything that you said so I can kind
Quite
of go point by
alright.
point.
Finally, what makes you any different from any of the other immigrants? Or what makes you and your father any different, considering that you said that you worked in a cartel, your father was a crack addict.
I didn't
What
say I
makes
worked
you-
in a cartel. I said that I worked selling drugs and I met a cartel member and cartel members, but yeah.
Okay, so you sold drugs.
Mhm.
What makes you any different from, what makes you better than the immigrants who aren't committing crimes?
Better?
Oh, you get to stay here, you think that they should
let's
go
start
home.
back at the first thing that you asked. So if someone comes to this country and they come to work, they can come through a legal process. And we kind of talked about it earlier. Is it hard? Is it difficult? Yes, 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 yes. Do you, does that change my perspective at all? No. If you come across this border without permission, then you need to go back to your home country or ask for permission. Like, it's that simple. So from that point going forward, like I'm saying to you over and over again, you committed a crime. Now, additional crimes, then again, I mean, I guess try and stop the people committing additional crimes too. Does it make me better or different or more special? As a human being, no. We're all equal in God's eyes. As an American citizen, it does. I'm afforded the rights and privileges of being an American citizen because A, my mother was an American citizen, and B, my father was here with legal permission. So, but more importantly, my mother's an American citizen. Yeah, it's true.
Good for you. Well then, I think that's all the questions I had. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Hi.
Hi.
I've heard a lot of people on the left talking about due process and regarding people like Kilmar Breger Garcia. How do you think due process factors into mass deportations?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. One of the things that bugs me, I'll be honest, on the right, is when someone brings up kind of that point, and they say, oh, you know, if you're here without permission, you don't get due process. Wrong, you do. You are due the process that is due to you. An American citizen, or someone that's here with legal permission, has a different process due to them. That's been affirmed by the Supreme Court in regards to people that come to the country without permission. They are apprehended within 100 miles of the border. There is a different set of processes due to that person. So I think that what happens is people get confused, lack of information, lack of education, that like every person, you put your foot on American soil, you're like, hey, I get a lawyer and I get all this. No, you don't. The process that's due to you is just different. So that's the thing I would encourage. If you've said it before, slap yourself on the hand. Don't say that illegal aliens don't deserve due process, because they do. But they are due a different process than American citizens or people that are here with legal permission.
What is that process? What's the difference between the process of an American citizen and an illegal immigrant?
Yeah, I mean, so in general, right, when you are charged with a crime, there's a certain set of things that happens. Even when you're here without legal permission, if you got here for 2 years, right, and you've been here for 2 years, there's some different set of processes that are due to you based off of Supreme Court precedent and based off of US law. So that process is going to be different depending on when you got here. I believe if you're here within like 14 days and you're with 100 miles of the border, you basically, you're out. You get caught, you're out. If you process and ask for asylum and there's reasonable suspicion that the asylum inspector says you're full of it, you're full of it, and they adjudicate and say, I made the decision on the spot, you're not eligible to be, for asylum. And again, all those other parameters, then you can get deported right away. So that's what I mean by due process. The process is different 100%. And like I said, when it comes to committing crimes, American citizens, just like illegal aliens, do get a process of having their day in court and stuff like that. But there's other mitigating circumstances that can call for you to be deported right away. The other thing just to consider, I want to say it's 15% of illegal aliens right now in this country actually have deportation orders. That if they get snatched up, they're gone, but they've been evading capture. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is this very interesting case that it looked like the Democrats just wanted to, for whatever reason, use him. I think it was a terrible case to use because he had been, denied and then approved, and then he had a deportation order. It was kind of a hot mess, but he's going to be, I believe, in Liberia by the beginning of November or something like that. So good for him.
On a similar topic, I was wondering how you feel about some ICE raids that are going on. I understand that you're definitely in favor of ICE raids, but
Absolutely.
yeah, how do you feel about the ones where people are just being taken, like without documentation, without checking all the boxes of like?
Yeah, I mean, if you could give me an example, here's what I've heard, and then you can give your answer. I'll hear someone say like, oh, this person was detained by ICE, and then 24 hours later they were released. They weren't taken. The idea that ICE is just snatching random people and they're disappearing is not true. Now, there's people that will make these claims, but like I said, the nice thing about this administration, they love social media. They're posting stuff all the time. Now, there are some cases where if you're not connected to the case, there could be other mitigating circumstances. Maybe they are part of an organized criminal unit and they've moved them because maybe they're gonna roll on some other members. So not every single person is given their exact whereabouts, but I would ask you, if you can find it, that's fine. You can search for it, come back and ask about it. But any specific cases of someone that ICE apprehended, right? And that they've just been holding them in some like black site for days or something like that. Even if it was the name, I'd like to be able to hear about it because I haven't.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
In case you wanted to.
Oh yeah, thanks. Do you want to read it? Or
You can.
let me read this. Oh, in 2025, a federal judge ruled that ICE has been conducting illegal warrantless arrests in violation of a settlement agreement that governed its actions in Illinois and several other states. This ruling found that agents were discriminately stopping and arresting individuals without warrants, including carrying blank civil warrants to be filled out on the spot. Under the settlement, ICE can only make warrantless arrests in public if they have probable cause to believe that the person is in the U.S. illegally and is a flight risk. They must consider factors like community ties and document the reasons for the arrest.
Sure, so what you just read to me was a difference in process. Initially, what you had suggested is that ICE was grabbing people and they were just disappearing them. And I'm saying that that's actually not what happened. Now, this disagreement that this judge has, this is a larger problem, but you have these district judges that are making these determinations that will say something to the effect of, I'm against this for a philosophical or even ideological reason, so therefore I'm going to say this. I think that as you go up the chain, it's pretty clear you cannot have a state step in and say, this is what we are going to say that is able to happen with federal officers. I think that's absurd. And I even think that when you talk about a district judge, if it's only pertains to that specific instance or case, that might make sense. But applying these broad universal injunctions are absurd. But I'm sure when the guy in the Wisconsin shirt gets up here, he'll try and explain a little bit more.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I hold this?
I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the things that we agree on. So sex trafficking is bad. I think we can all agree on that, and we'd all like to see that end. And I think that there are a lot of factors involved in that. I think most people would recognize that. Certainly, there is an immigrant component to sex trafficking. I think we're casting a lot of responsibility on immigrants in this case tonight, and I don't think that necessarily merits that much weight in terms of responsibility for that. To the other gentleman's point, there is demand for this sort of thing, so I think people would like this to end, and I think it needs to be a comprehensive thing. To your point about E-Verify, another point that we agree on, I completely agree with you that politicians should enact and enforce E-Verify. It is something that's out there, it's easy to do, they're ready to do it, and you're right, it would cost the companies a ton of money, which is why, for the most part, it's been Republicans who have blocked that from being enacted.
I don't disagree. You ain't gonna find a disagreement from me, brother.
Right, so I'm saying this is great, like we're starting on the things we agree with. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota. I grew up on a farm, and the towns around me went from 95, 97% white when I grew up to one of them I think is now 70% white, another is 55% white, and another is 47% white. So just in my adult life, there has been this change in these communities. That's a lot of demographic change. And why was there that change? Because meatpacking plants went up in this area. There was demand for labor that area, that market, the people I grew up with did not want those jobs. They moved away, they want nothing to do with it. But there's a lot of land, and you can look for labor. You're gonna get some, but they need more. So what do? They import labor. They bring it in, either they're bringing it in through seasonal visas and other things, or they're looking away as they employ illegal immigrants. So these illegal immigrants settle in the community, they become part of the fabric of that community, they set up homes, they have families, their kids are in school, and eventually they're there, and then the crackdown comes and we blame the immigrants when there have been all these pull factors pulling them into these communities for years, and it's been the companies pulling them in. If they had enacted E-Verify like years ago, if they just said you can't employ illegal immigrants, it would have set up a different demographic trend for these areas. And that's just Minnesota. This is true in Iowa, South Dakota, Wisconsin, all over the Midwest. There are these sorts of things going on. So I completely agree with you that E-Verify is something that the government and the politicians should be enacting. And I would encourage everybody here to encourage their politicians, the representatives, to enact E-Verify. The last point I'd like to make is tied to this. So you mentioned Christianity, and this meeting tonight started with prayer, and there's a lot of there's an aura of Christianity around what's going on here tonight. So I grew up in a Christian home, went to church. I still consider myself a Christian, and we as Christians are called to live differently. So when you talk about group identity, group identity is a thing. It's human nature. It's what we live with. We identify our in-group and we push against the out-group. It's just human nature. This is what we're called to live against, and not just called like in some abstract way. Christ's words themselves are, there is no Jew nor Gentile, there's no male or female, there is none of this group identity, there is just us. There is just humans. And in the Bible, in the Old Testament, when God calls the Jews out, when he calls them out and says, I have chosen you, it's not because they're special. It's because he wants them to live differently than everybody else, to set an example of what it means to live a godly life, a moral life. And time and again, when he's upset with them in the Old Testament, it's because they think that they're special. And they're actually not. He calls them out to live differently. The same thing is true with Christians in the New Testament. When Christ says he's calling them out to live differently, and when Christians time and time get it wrong, and Christians think we're special. And I hear this again and again with Christians in the United States. Somehow this is a Christian nation, or somehow we're special. We're not. We are called to live differently. The Christian nation doesn't mean anything. We are Christians. We are a body of Christ. There are no Christian, there's no American Christians.
Yeah,
We are
I-
all,
I
just
think-
wait a sec, listen
yeah,
to what
I
I'm saying
think I
here.
understand your
We
point.
are Christians everywhere, and we have brothers and sisters everywhere in this world, brothers and sisters around us. And you can say, yes, we have this political identity, which we do as Americans, and we have this Christian identity. But we need, if you're talking about being a Christian here, that is letting that Christian identity supersede this other identity and influence the way that you see yourself as an American.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
listen, I appreciate you, you know, you got out what you wanted to get out. Here's the point though. As a Christian, if every single human being on this planet professed that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that he came to this earth, that he died for our sins, that he rose again in 3 days, if every single human being professed that, we wouldn't need anyone to worry about enforcing the law. It's because people don't follow the law that we actually have to have the law. Every good Christian will follow the law.
You're a Christian and you
but
pull
listen,
drugs.
No, this is the point. This is the point. Is that we develop laws to put constraints on man because people don't follow the law. I would love nothing more than for every person to profess that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and they died for the sin.
Professing Christianity does not make you follow the law.
And we have a government system
It's just a title.
that needs to protect its citizens.
Yes, we do, but that's,
Right.
that's
And
a
so
political
I can't go out
identity.
and say, well, I'm a Christian, so I guess I don't believe in borders or following laws.
No,
And
there's-
if someone
the two
wants to
don't
come in
follow
and
each
kill
other.
my neighbor, I guess that's not the
The
Christian
two
thing
don't
to
follow
do.
each other. Being a Christian does not mean you get to say, I am moral because I'm a Christian.
Of
It
course
doesn't
you
make
don't.
you moral.
All humans are flawed.
Yes,
It's our sinful
yes.
nature. But you're
Yes.
talking about the difference between what we profess as individuals and what a nation is supposed to do.
Yes.
And I would argue
But
that
your
if we got
Christianity should
more
influence
people
the
to
way
actually
you see a
follow
nation.
What Jesus
Your
Christ
Christianity
taught,
needs
we
to make a
wouldn't need
difference,
laws,
otherwise
and
it's
that's the
empty.
point.
Otherwise it's empty.
What's empty?
Your Christianity, if it does not influence the way that you see other people, if you're saying my American identity is more important than a Christian
Whoever
identity,
said that?
because the way you look at the way you're treating immigrants is according to your
The
American
way
identity.
I'm treating
It's
immigrants,
not
or the way
according to
that
the way
a government that has
no, the
borders
way that
and
you're
laws.
talking about immigrants is
How am
according
I
to your
talking
American
about
political
immigrants?
identity.
What have I
Everything you've said here
specifically
tonight.
said
Everything
about
you've said
any
here tonight.
specific immigrant?
Everything
I'm
you've
talking
said here
about
tonight.
groups, trends, and data.
You said we have these in-groups and out-groups. It's natural for us, and that therefore we have to have these things. Yes, we need laws, but our Christian nature, our Christian identity should have some influence over the way that
It
we
does
treat
have
people.
some influence. And I would argue to you, brother, because you said that you're a Christian,
Yes.
right? So we are brothers in Christ,
Yes.
right? I live my life in order to glorify Jesus. That's what I do personally. When we are talking
How
about...
do you do that? How do you glorify Christ?
How do I work?
Yeah. How does your
Brother,
living your life glorify
Brother,
Christ?
the amount of charity that I do to help my community on a regular, frequent
That
basis,
is awesome.
right, that glorifies Christ. I pray every morning. I go out and I actually tell people about the love of
But
Jesus
how do you
Christ.
treat your neighbor? That's the part that's
That's
important.
literally
How do you
how I
treat your
treat my
neighbor?
neighbor.
Your neighbor is also the immigrant. It's the widow. It's
Yeah,
the
see,
orphan.
This is the part of your
These are the
argument
people-
where it falls apart.
How?
Because at the end
It's
of the day,
biblical.
listen, your neighbor, your brother, your neighbor,
Yes.
of how you treat them as an individual,
Yes.
applying that same ethos to the government that is not an individual is suicide for a group
I'm not
of
talking
people.
about a government. I'm talking about the immigrant that's in my community, whether he's illegal or not,
Yeah, but
to see
you
them as a
shouldn't-
human
that-
being.
if-
And I don't
if you
want them
follow
to be
through, like I
sex
said,
trafficked.
You mass deport everyone, then you're not going to
The
have a
way
neighbor.
that this is going
You're not gonna
about
have a neighbor
does
because
not
that's
have
what a
anything
law
to
is.
do with
And
Christianity.
as I said to you earlier, if you don't like the law, then go to your Congress and have them change it.
Right, absolutely.
But law
as,
is the law.
as Christians, we
That's
still
not
have a
your neighbor.
responsibility to
That's
treat
an
our
illegal
neighbors
alien
with
that's an invader
humanity.
that should not be
With
there.
humanity and with the
You
love
should
of
still
Christ.
love them. You should still love them as an
Absolutely.
individual, as a fellow human being.
Yes.
But a government needs to take them, just like if you deal drugs. You have to go to prison if you get caught dealing drugs.
Right.
You're still gonna love them. You're gonna say, hey man, that's my neighbor, but I'm just gonna let them sell drugs because they're my neighbor.
There's nothing about being a Christian that says I should let them sell drugs, or I should just let people do things willy-nilly.
There's something
Nothing about that.
your
Christian
neighbor
says,
has broken the
even if
law,
they're,
and
even
that
if
has nothing
you
to do
as
with
a
whether
drug
or not you love
dealer,
them or not.
you as a drug dealer, I can
means
still love you
enforcing
as a
the law.
human being. I
Yeah,
can still
the
love
drug
you as a
dealer caught it
human
because they
being,
broke the
and
law.
that's what I'm talking about.
If you're here without legal permission, you broke the law, so. Thank you.
Riveting conversation. Well, now that my mind's on that, I guess I should say that I have a three questions that are related and unrelated at the same time.
All right.
To start off, I'm a Christian as well. I'm Roman Catholic. I'm a convert, and I would say that I do agree that we should take care of our neighbors, even if they're illegal immigrants. But to your earlier point, you can still love them and you can still care for them. But when a government needs to protect its borders, they do need to deport the illegal immigrants, right?
Mhm.
And so in the meantime, you can still love them. And as you actually mentioned earlier, deporting them or having them go through the proper channels or even encouraging them to take that $1,000 and to self-deport and then reapply legally would actually even be better for that particular immigrant.
Agreed.
All right, so that was the first one. The second one I have a question about how ICE takes, how do I put this? How ICE goes into a community and removes an illegal immigrant, right, to deport them. I actually was having a conversation with a professor in business earlier today, and he did work down in LA and whatnot, and he mentioned how at that time, when someone who was illegal had gotten deported, that they that it was very, I'm hesitant to say violent, but it was very sudden, if you will, and it left a hole in the community. So my question is, how nowadays, or if there needs to be reform, how does ICE go about removing illegal immigrants from communities without causing damage to that community?
Listen, I mean, when you're talking about tactics, which tactics should be used, I think that it's always important to be critical. Like, I'm not like just because the government says it, I'm a of the people, by the people type of person. But in general, I actually believe that people that raise their hand and swear an oath actually have a higher set of just morality in general than people that want to serve, whether you're talking about ICE or law enforcement. That's what I actually believe in. The data bears out super well there. So can we have a conversation about, is there better techniques? Sure. But again, what I've seen for the vast majority, most of the interactions, if you just like, you'll see these videos, right? Someone gets pulled over, and I know it's completely sidetracked, but you'll get someone that's pulled over and they're like, man, why you pull me over? And they're like talking, going back and forth with the cop, and then they're like, I'm gonna grab this thing from my pocket. The cop's like, keep your hands where they're at. And you're disobeying. Listen, man, there's going to be problems. So I would argue that most of these ICE videos that I've seen, someone's fighting back. If they would just go along with it, there would be less disruption. And I get why they're fighting back, because they don't want to go. And I get all that. But the law is the law, and that's the way that I look at it. And we can petition our government to change the law. But yeah, listen, man, one of the things that I said from the onset, not in this conversation, but I actually did a panel with Sahan Journal, which is a journal down in the Twin Cities. And I was on this panel, and it was me versus like a bunch of people on the left. And I said, ICE is going to have to be very careful. Because if you see a video where they're like kicking a child in the face, right? And they're like, beating, someone senseless, that's going to look really bad. So I'll be honest, I think everything that I've seen has been relatively well tamed. I think that a lot of the things that get pushed where ICE may seem like they're using more force because you have this escalation of force and you have the continuum of force, it's probably because they've been resisting. And hey man, when you get apprehended, your best thing to do is to go quietly. Because I think that the notion, and I'll say that there are politicians out there that have this notion that ICE is disappearing people. And I think that creates hysteria, and it's just not true. And if it is, bring it forth. I'm not saying that cops have never broken the law, because they do. I think that you should always be very watchful, but.
I was actually glad you brought up the topic of ICE disappearing people. Now, even though I am actually in favor of mass deportation on a philosophical level, just like the philosophy of a nation, I also believe in the phrase wrestling with God as a form of reverence. And so that's why I was like, when you were having that conversation earlier with the girl who was up here, I looked that up on my phone just to again, wrestling with God
I
as
want
a
the
form of
tension,
reverence.
like I said, yeah.
Yeah. My second question, and this one's a little bit more personal to me.
Yeah.
Sanctuary laws, not in terms of sanctuary cities, but in regards to churches. So the reason where this question is coming from is my dad, before he met my mom, he was a missionary, and he was doing a lot of work, also actually down in LA, and he was doing missionary work with gang members down there. And at one point, some gang members had come into the church, and they were attending mass with him. And the police had barged into the church, arrested the gang members, and put them out on the curb in handcuffs and whatnot to show that, hey, the community is safe and whatnot. However, for those particular gang members, they were under the impression that being inside of the church would not maybe, it would give them at least a form of security. Now, again, I get it, they're criminals and whatnot, but at least inside the church, is there a possible way that that could have been more reverent? Maybe the police waited outside to make the arrest or something.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into illegal immigration, where my question that's more related is, in the case of illegal immigrants that seek sanctuary within churches. I think there's sanctuary laws about that, but I don't know if they're necessarily enforced. But how is that gone about?
Yeah, so there's kind of this weird thing where you have like Lutheran social services that helps people that, again, meet a certain requirement of legal status, right? It's a little bit complicated, but you, as an American citizen, right, depending on what the law is, you don't have to go and tell that your neighbor is an illegal alien, right? That's not a law that we have. I think that you should probably try and talk to your neighbor and really encourage them to take off. Myself personally, I actually was in a situation where I convinced someone to leave this country, someone that had been here. And I said, it's so much better if you do it. Was I gonna narc them out? Probably not, right? Is that bad on me? Maybe. But I think that when you talk about what churches do, again, as long as they're not breaking the law, is it the morally correct thing to do? I don't know. If someone comes to me and they've broken the law and they're a drug dealer, right? And I'm like, all right, you can kind of deal drugs out of the back of the church. Well, now you're a drug dealing church, so you can't do that either, right? But I can understand that wanting to give people reprieve, that shouldn't be impeded on by the government. If a church wants to go and help those that are illegal aliens, they do, and they already do right now. But there is a difference between harboring, right? Like there are specific laws about that. If someone's declared and you're hiding them and ICE is poking around and that's bad business, and I don't think churches should do that. I would actually encourage a church to, set up communication with maybe churches in their home country so they can facilitate their removal back to their home country and provide resources for them in that point. And I think that that's always an important thing too for the church to do.
I like that solution. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys, we have about 10 minutes left before the event will be closing. So just if we could limit to one question, I'd love if all four
Yeah,
of you could ask
we got
a
these
question.
two haven't asked a question.
Yeah,
You two
yeah.
did. After then if there's time, then go back to you.
So just, we'll try to keep it to one, and then, of course, you can come in for once again. But we've got about 10 minutes or so.
Thank you, AK. I just wanted to add a little bit of context that when the Israelites were wandering in the desert, God also called on them to enter the country and follow the laws in which they have established as it is from God's authority.
Amen.
They also consequently in Romans say, whoever rebels against authority by the authority established by God is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those will bring judgment on themselves. Today, ICE raided in Hibbing, Minnesota on a drug sting and arrested individuals legally through the legal process and backed it up under a judge's order here in Minnesota. So it is working. We're ending the criminal drug line here in Minnesota today.
Good.
Now, question, how do we as conservatives message the fact that we want reform on the immigration system to have the people like your father who want to come here legally and build a better life while also complementing the strong border policy?
Yeah, I think that this is like an appetite for conversation question. And this kind of plays kind of into the larger part. Until we are able to address this number, whether it's 12 million or 40 million, until we address that, the American people don't have an appetite to hear anything else. Like, they want to see this reform happen and enforcement of law in order to be able to be like, okay, now I'm ready to hear this. And this is what I meant when I said that you're having this low trust society. I'm starting to hear people on the right, and it's a very, 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 very small percentage, that are like, no visas at all, man, shut her down. Because again, you'll get that number to grow. Maybe that number was 1/2 of 1%, and now it's 1%. It's gonna be 5%, it's gonna be 10%. That's just the nature of humans. So I think until you get to that point, even having conversations further down the line, which Trump has made me, kind of like, and he was asked about, what do you think about DACA? Deferred action for childhood arrivals. They have a special carve out. He was like, DACA, we don't want to worry about them. They're here, they're doing. I'm like, either we have laws that we enforce or we don't. But again, the American people, like, he got ripped by MAGA. MAGA ripped him apart. He's like, how dare you say that? So I just think that until we address this issue, which we are, and we are getting a decent amount. I mean, if we end first year with 3 million deportations, 3.5, that's going to be a huge dent. And I think people will be more likely at that point to feel like, okay, let's have these deeper conversations about some reforms that we can do. So I would just say, if this is something that's important to you, obviously you should share content from people that create content. I'm on TikTok, I got like 150,000 followers, I'm a little guy, but maybe you like my content, so you go and you just share it. Maybe you find someone that you feel is better at explaining the way that you feel about it, go and share that content. And I think that right now, more than ever, at any other time in history, we have the ability to affect how people feel and the actions that are done through social media, because it's just so much information that you're able out there, get out there and influence people. But thanks.
Thanks, AK.
All right, so I want to start off this question with a little bit of a preface.
Yep.
I want to say that I think the United States can use Europe as a learning tool for this. I want to preface this by saying I moved back from the United Kingdom 3 months ago, where they have a lot of these immigration laws in place, open borders, open all of that, and the country is not functioning well. They have tripled their amount of rapes, murders, gang violence is through the roof, and it is 92% immigrant. And I want to preface my question to you, what can the United Kingdom do to recover this? Because this is the native English land. They don't have anywhere else to go. And with the progress of this illegal immigration, Britons are set to be a minority in their country by 2050. I want to perhaps seek suggestions for the English people. How do they combat this with it being so far along of them being displaced from their country and their values being so obstructed and other courts operating on English soil?
Yeah, so I am not bullish on England, man. I'm not. I'm a Djangoist. People, they're like, man, you're really pro-America. I'm like, I'm so pro-America, I don't care if it's like one of these woke Olympians. When they're competing against any other nation, I'm like, USA, USA. When there's a UFC fight, I don't care who the UFC fighter is, they could be the biggest heel. If it's an American versus any other team, I will always vote. I will always cheer for the American. I don't care who it is. That's how Djangoist I am. When I look at UK, when I look at England, they're cooked, man. Like, they're cooked. Like, I'm so black-pilled that they really only have one way out, and that's violent revolution. There's so much broken that if I lived in England, I would come to this country, unless you're part of the illegal immigrant invader class, then whatever, man. Congratulations, you did to England what we did to the United States before it was the United States. That's what has happened. And again, you can say over a long enough period of time, they crack down, but they have such a large percentage of their population, it's going to be violent. And I honestly don't think there's any way around it. I do think that it is a somewhat canary for us. Listen, I don't know what the future's gonna hold. Maybe, 2028, Democrat wins and they're in for the next, 18 years, and then we're basically England, because they're like, open her back up, let them all come in. But yeah, man, I am England's cook, bro.
Would you, I want to possibly get some more, just your opinion on this.
Sure.
Looking at the statistical rapes and murders in Europe in the European Union, I get fought a lot that borders and immigrants do not affect those numbers. We have actual numbers of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, even Sweden, compared to Poland, who has shut their borders and has no illegal migration to Poland. Poland's numbers of rape and murder are the lowest in Europe. How can you try to show that to people when people just like to disregard that statistic when it is a very prominent statistic?
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of a larger question. There's a book by author Jonathan Haidt, Moral Foundations Theory is kind of the premise. It's basically, it's called, I can't even remember what it's called now, The Righteous Mind, yes, The Righteous Mind. In that book, he explains that humans are actually driven by intuition. So if I intuitively think that mass migration, mass immigration is a good thing, like in my moral framework, like I feel good about it, I'll look at any data that you show me, and I'm like, that's cherry picked. And I'll look, and I can look at 100 examples of something that affirms, right, your position. And if I can just find one that kind of close side head turn affirms my position, I'm like, yep, see, I told you I was right the whole time. So that's the thing is, like, you can show people, I'm not saying don't try and show people facts and truth, you should. But a lot of times, you just kind of got to move in your direction and make the positions and stances that you make. Go out there and talk about it. But at the end of the day, if their intuitions are that this is a good thing, they're going to poo-poo all the stats that you show them. And so I just think at the end of the day, don't go into it hoping for an outcome of changing their mind. The outcome is, I'm here to just show you what it is that I believe, and maybe you can connect with them on another position, and maybe you can get them to change your mind, but it's very rare that you're ever going to change someone's mind with facts and figures. It's just not the way that human brains work.
Thank you very much.
So I think we're gonna wrap up here. AK, do you have any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up here?
No, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate the conversation. If you want to follow a middle-aged guy on X, I'm at Real AK Kamara. I'm at AK Kamara if you want to follow a middle-aged guy on TikTok. Thank you.